Update is at 7:30. Chicago's Morning Answer with Dan and Amy continues next on AM 560, The Answer.
Listen to AM 560, The Answer, online at 560theanswer.com, on the AM 560 mobile app, on your Alexa-powered smart speaker, on TuneIn, iHeart, and radio.com. This is Chicago's Morning Answer with Dan Proft and Amy Jacobson on AM 560, The Answer.
Cause they got the beat, the campus beat, the campus beat. Yeah, the campus beat.
Yeah, survey talked about earlier in the week, and we're going to talk about again. Released by the D.C.-based Victims of Communism Memorial Foundation. That's
a mouthful.
Well, it's an important organization. Find out how important momentarily. YouGov is the polling outfit they use to ask millennials, age 23 to 38, about their views on capitalism, socialism, communism. 36% of millennials survey says say that they approve of communism, which is up by about 30% over just last year. More than 1 in 3 millennials say they approve of communism. 70% say they'd be likely to vote for a socialist candidate for president.
Yeah, because no one wants to pay for college.
Marion Smith, the executive director of the Victims of Communism Memorial Foundation, said the historical amnesia about the dangers of communism and socialism is on full display in this year's report. Well, the amnesia, though, isn't necessarily among the millennials, because to forget something, you had to know something in the first place. And the question is, do they even know 20th century history? Probably not. Not very well. The socialist candidates for president clearly don't, or they're trying to gaslight history. They're trying to reinvent it day one in present. Why might this be happening? Why the spike? Well, there's a lot of reasons, but I think some of them are contained in this most excellent statement from a University of California at Los Angeles. That's UCLA to you.
Right, I got it.
Law professor Stephen Bainbridge. He posted, I'm up for merit raise at UCLA Law this year, and I'm now required to submit a statement of how I contribute to the university's goals in diversity, equity, and inclusion.
Oh, God.
So he authored a statement for consideration as they contemplate his raise, in which he writes, I have long been particularly concerned with the lack of intellectual diversity at the law school. The groups that account for most of the underrepresentation among racial, gender, religious, and ideological groups in law are Republicans, both male and female, Protestants and Catholics. He points out study of various university faculty show that at Cornell, the ratio of liberal to conservative faculty is 166 to 6. Stanford, 151 to 17. UCLA, 141 to 9.
Ouch.
He also looked at the contributions of UCLA law professors. 38 contributed solely to Democrat candidates, 3 exclusively to Republicans. 93% of all contributions from UCLA law professors went to Democrats and affiliated groups. So
That's not surprising.
Well, no, it's not surprising, but it's instructive. And so how did I contribute to diversity, inclusion, and equity? Writes Professor Bainbridge. I've made particular efforts to reach out and support conservative students. I've served as mentor for the leaders of the Federalist Society and Christian Law Students Association. I've given talks to both organizations. I taught a perspectives on law and lawyering seminar devoted to Catholic social thought and the law, and so on and so forth. That's how he contributed. Interesting reaction he's getting in the academic community. Jeffrey Flyer, he's the dean at Harvard Medical School. As dean of a major academic institution, I could not have said this, referring to Bainbridge's statement, but I will now. Requiring such statements and applications for appointments and promotions is an affront to academic freedom and diminishes the true value of diversity, equity, of inclusion by trivializing it. So perhaps the worm is turning, or at least the conversation is expanding such that generation following millennials that's in college now may get a broader understanding of American history than the millennials, a third of whom think communism is a good idea. For more on this topic, we're pleased to be joined by a woman who started an organization to do some of what Stephen Bainbridge is doing at UCLA, but across the country. She is Morgan Zegers. She is the founder of Young Americans Against Socialism. Morgan, thanks so much for joining us. Appreciate it.
Thank you for having me. This is a very important topic, so I'm glad to see you guys are covering it.
So you heard us talk about the survey. I'm sure you saw it, and what's your reaction and explanation, perhaps including and maybe in addition to what Professor Bainbridge over at UCLA Law pointed out?
Well, from the perspective of Young Americans Against Socialism, our nonprofit, we believe there is a very false narrative being created, and it comes from an equation. There's not just one reason. First of all, our generation is very ignorant, and that's not in a bad way. That's not an insult. I just mean by that we were not properly educated in the classroom about what socialism specifically is, what communism is, and what's the difference between that and just a bad dictatorship. I think in the classroom when we learned about Stalin, when we learned about Castro, Mao Zedong, we weren't really taught those guys were socialists and communists that promised really great free things and a really great utopian society, and the result ended up in starvation and death and camps and absolute devastation of the people.
Well, don't you
Instead,
think the
we're just
millennials?
taught they were very bad people.
Yeah, but the millennials today, can't they see what's going on in Venezuela? Why are they ignorant to that?
That's the second problem is on top of that ignorance, there is some very good intentions out there in my generation. We really care about people. And the far left, this is our real enemy here. The far left leaders and politicians are telling my generation, if you adopt our socialist policies, we will end up like Nordic Europe. They're saying capitalism is bad. We need socialism. But if we do, we won't end up like Venezuela. That's not socialism that we're talking about. We'll end up like Nordic Europe. And that's what we're trying to dispel here, because when Bernie Sanders says, like he did on October 27th this year, we need to seize the means of production of the utilities industries in this country to fight climate change, that is socialism. That will make us like Venezuela. Our generation sees that and thinks it's going to make us like Denmark, which has a free market economy.
Well, right, and I'm glad you brought up the whole climate change and the apocalyptic rhetoric around that, because it seems to me that's the hook into millennials that the left is using most pronouncedly.
Absolutely,
Right,
and you guys touched on it both. First of all, so when there's three tactics that I've noticed throughout history socialists use to come to power, communists as well. First of all, they have to control the narrative, control the rhetoric, and they really are doing that well by convincing people that socialism will make us like Denmark and Nordic Europe, that freedom isn't freedom from an oppressive government. Instead, it's freedom from the responsibility of paying for things that you don't necessarily want to pay for. The second is creating a desire for wealth redistribution. And the far left has done that in my generation by saying, you see those evil rich people on Wall Street that have all that money? We're going to take it from them and give it to you to pay off your student loans, because it's not fair that you have to pay so much, that you're in so much debt. We're going to tax the rich and we're going to give it to you. That creates that sense of they have something that I don't have. I'm going to use government force to take it. Boom. They've done it successfully. The third and final one is to create a sense of fear and urgency. And that's exactly what they're doing with climate change. So you guys touched on both of those topics. When you say the world's going to end in 12 years and the only solution to such a big problem is a big bill like the Green New Deal, which AOC's chief of staff admitted started as a socialist reconstruction of the U.S. economy, and then later on, after it was written, they turned it into something about climate change, that's incredibly concerning. Because our generation thinks the world is ending in 12 years and that the evil Republicans and conservatives don't care about the planet and capitalism is killing us. It's no wonder that 38% support communism now and that 70% would vote for a socialist.
Well, here's the thing, though, too. I mean, it's frustrating, and it's good that you founded this organization, because it's never been easier to disseminate information. And certainly that would include.
But it has to come in like 3 or 4 second blips.
Well, but
then the kids just move on.
But I mean, this isn't too dense. I mean, for example, on climate change, 1990, the Washington Post front page story: carbon dioxide is the gas most responsible for the predictions Earth will warm on an average by about 3 degrees Fahrenheit by the year 2020. Other outlets, including and scientists. said could warm by as much as 6 degrees Fahrenheit. Well, the data is in, and over 30 years, the United States, the Earth has, and both the Earth and the United States have warmed by approximately 1 degree, so off by a factor of 3 to 6, which is a pretty big margin to be off. And you would think that that would spark some reconsideration of those predicting end times. But it seems to me that this information just doesn't get to a lot of the people that think communism is a good idea and the world's going to end in 12 years.
Absolutely. And two things on that. First of all, there's a lot of people that say our generation could be the most freedom-loving and the most conservative generation out there because we have the world at our fingertips. We could go on Google and find any information that we want, and the history, the facts are on our side. So it matters that there's educational content and information on the web that is going to show the truth and is not going to have that false socialist narrative being pushed by the far left in this country. The second thing is, the first tactic that I talked about earlier, the controlling the narrative, when you think of the messaging of conservatives versus the left, I see a video from Bernie Sanders online, and I kid you not, it says, "Am I really free if I have student loan debt? Am I really free if I have high health care costs? Am I really free if I only work my dead-end job just to get health care insurance?" And the video says, no, you're not free. Freedom comes from economic freedom, and economic freedom comes from the Medicare for all and student loan forgiveness and free college and the Green New Deal, XYZ. So the left uses very basic and powerful language to even tell our generation, you're not even free in America. And then the right, we're over here saying we're going to repeal and replace Obamacare for over a decade now, and we're going to talk about the markets, and we're going to talk about capitalism. It's not emotional. It's not powerful the way we talk about things. And if the right is better at messaging and provides more realistic solutions to show that we care about the issues our generation cares about, I think we would be more successful. But unfortunately, for the last few years, the right has left a vacuum, a massive hole. When we didn't talk about environmental issues, we didn't talk much about the student loan crisis, we don't talk much about healthcare, or at least provide solutions for the failed Obamacare. And so when we left that vacuum, the far left swooped right in and filled that void with very radical legislation.
Yeah, but
and
it's almost as if they're
our generation
brainwashing
that
them.
seemed like they cared.
Well, I feel as if they're brainwashing them, though. I mean, is a mother
course.
sitting back?
They're
and
not. They're
watching
not
all of
brainwashing them. They're heart washing them. You never get to the. You never get to the brain. There's
Exactly.
my Christmas the homily at the Christmas mass I attended. The priest had a good line that I'm going to steal and make my own.
Okay.
He basically said,
There's some attribution there,
Is
Morgan,
it
just a little bit.
Yeah, right. The longest trip in the world is the 18 inches between your head and your heart. Now he was talking. He was talking about it from going from your head to your heart. I'm talking about it. It's a round trip, so that's really the longest trip in the world. Your head to your heart, and your heart back to your head. And what the left has done a good job of is having people volunteer to disconnect the head and the heart.
Mm-hmm. Well, I do a lot of college speeches, and I was at NYU a couple of weeks ago, and I kid you not, probably half the crowd was from the left, and they came and they sat down and they had these smirks on their faces. And it was very recent after the Victims of Communism poll came out, and so I decided to ask the audience some questions. And if you looked more into the Victims of Communism poll, there's a statistic that said 43% of young people believe the Communist Manifesto better guarantees freedom and equality more so than the Declaration of Independence. Mm-hmm. And it says 1 in 5 young Americans believe that we would be better off if private property were abolished. And I asked those questions, and people in the crowd raised their hands. They supported the Communist Manifesto over the Declaration of Independence, and they supported Karl Marx. They were true socialists and communists. And it really it breaks my heart because I don't know if they understand what they're asking for. I believe a majority don't. I think, like I said, with the narrative, I think the left is lying to them about what socialism actually is. Nobody, not 70% of people my age would actually want to seize the means of production and have government-controlled industries, and that's what socialism is. But unfortunately, 70% would vote for a socialist. But it's scary to me to wonder how many of those kids in that classroom understood what happened under Stalin, Mao Zedong, Cuba, Castro, and still want to say we need communism in the United States.
Yeah, see,
That's spooky.
they're not socialists and they're not communists. They're sentimentalists. And that's the real problem. We talk too much about them having a philosophy or abiding the Communist Manifesto as if they're actually actually have a philosophy, an economic or political philosophy. They don't. They're sentimentalists, and that's what Flannery O'Connor famously said: sentimentality leads to the gas chamber. And this is what she's talking about, what you're describing. So continue
Absolutely.
the great.
And Bernie Sanders, I have a feeling these guys, it's just a matter of catching them saying it. I think they have some very interesting thoughts in the private, but they aren't saying it publicly. I wouldn't put it past them. I'm very concerned at the violence of the left. I'm concerned that they do believe that the end justifies the means. That's a classic socialist term. And I'm not saying it's the young people in this, but I'm saying we need to understand who the enemy is here, and it's the far left movement, the leaders at the top, who truly believe in socialism and are using my generation as useful idiots.
Well, Comrade Bernie, definitely a red. You're right about that. Morgan Zegers, founder of Young Americans Against Socialism. Morgan, thanks so much for joining us. Continue your good work. Appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
It was a pleasure, and she joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line.
It's like a hot, steaming cup of information to start your day. It's Chicago's Morning Answer on AM 560. The Answer.
In 2019, Illinois became the abortion capital of the Midwest. But what are you going to do about it? Join thousands at the largest pro-life event in the Midwest, Saturday, January 11th at the March for Life Chicago. Hear from keynote speaker and abortion survivor Claire Caldwell, the Chicago Bears' Pat McCaskey, Cardinal Supich, and many other pro-life leaders. Check out new and expanded events all day, including the convention at the Congress Plaza Hotel, a youth rally, the March for Life rally and March at Daly Plaza, a dinner banquet, even swing dancing into the night. Purchase your tickets to the banquet and cocktail hour, sign up for a free fast pass to the convention, and find out more at marchforlifechicago.org. The 2020 March for Life Chicago theme is Life Empowers. Pro-life is pro-woman. The voiceless need a voice. March for babies, march for women, march for life. Visit marchforlifechicago.org today. That's marchforlifechicago.org.
Balance of nature. Changing the world, one life at a time.
This is better than I expected. You guys, your customer service and everything, you guys are great. Yeah, you're the best company out there. And the commercials, they talk about it, but a lot of times it's like, I don't know if it really gives it true justice of what this really is. People need to know this is maybe the most amazing product I've ever tried. You can just feel the energy. It's so pure. It tastes so good. I'm just blown away by it. It's amazing.
See how getting a variety of over 10 servings of whole fruits and vegetables